The lockdown is destroying small business. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.Heise here and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab a fresh stein of coffee and let's have a look at this article from the ABC, because it's discussing just the roller coaster ride of locking down is having on small business. It really feels like the middle class and small businesses are going to really cop it hard out of all of this. And it seems to just be ignored. The media, particularly the ABC, it's good to see they're covering this, but some of them don't seem to appreciate the challenges that businesses are facing. So closing and reopening during the pandemic shutdown roller coaster takes a toll on businesses, and it would be exhausting. It really would be exhausting. You have to feel sorry for these people. Even just having a premises, getting it all set up, all the investment you put on there, then running your business and your staff. Inner Sydney restaurant Nomad remains shut, but it was not the pandemic that forced it out of action initially. We haven't had the best 12 months, co-owner Rebecca Yazbek told the ABC's Business. We moved down to Melbourne to open Nomad down here and got a phone call from our staff that the restaurant was on fire. In a whirlwind 7 weeks, the restaurant reopened at the temporary site down the road, and then the pandemic hit. So, these poor people, they've had it bloody hard. She said she and her team were faced with having to pay rent on 2 sites in order to stay open for takeaway, and with the JobKeeper wage supplement yet to be announced, they decided to cease trading during the shutdown. It's not an economical exercise when you're looking at reduced turnover of up to 90%, she said. That's the sad truth. Some businesses won't recover from this, everyone. Some businesses won't come back. You don't really have the option of serving 2,000 people a week in takeaway. That's not the same spend per head as you would get in a restaurant. Shutting down and reopening both comes with costs. Shutting down is not without its own expenses. For Nomad, there was the cost of leaving the temporary site in the condition required by the lease, as well as storage costs for furniture and more than 2,000 bottles of wine. Oh no, they just got the new temporary location set up and they had to put it back to base build. Peter Strong, the Chief Executive of the Council of Small Business Organisations Australia, said losses of goods was a significant cost for businesses forced to shut, both initially in March and again in the latest Victorian lockdown. Businesses who have purchased eggs, beer, fruit juice, bread, and what have you will now find that will perish, and they'll have to go and spend money again in 6 weeks' time. In addition to perishable goods and inventory such as clothing, which could be out of season or fashion by the time retailers reopen, businesses also face fixed costs, including rent, insurance and utilities that continue to mount even if at a reduced rate. Reopening is also a costly exercise, with some sectors required to have additional staffing and cleaning to ensure compliance with safety guidelines. And as Melbourne demonstrates, reopening can be short-lived. This really does seem that there's going to be a disproportionate effect on the business class, on the small business class due to this. It's definitely an assessment each business owner has to make, having the trade-off between do I continue trading and take a risk, or a gamble that normality will come into play, or do I stay closed because that's the cheaper option for me? Sal Algeri, the national lead of Deloitte's restructuring services, said, I'd say there's probably a number that are saying the risk is too high and the investment in having to buy new inventory and to incur further costs to open for potentially a short while is not really worth it. Helen Lee reopened her South Melbourne yoga studio when restrictions eased, but she said the 10-person per class limit meant it was not financially viable. We were not even breaking even, she said. So the income for 17 days we reopened, we only made $3,000. It's not even enough to pay for the rent, not to mention gas, electricity, and the teacher's salary. There you go. However, the alternative, which is the current situation, is worse. Miss Lee said The money earned from online classes she ran during the first shutdown was not enough to justify teaching them, so she needed to be allowed to physically open her studio. I mean, it's not the same. Those of you that have done these online exercise classes, we did it with the kids doing the Zoom. It's just not the same, everyone. The interaction isn't the same. The experience isn't the same. It's not as good. It's not as good. Some businesses will not survive the latest lockdown. The reality of the stage 4 lockdown in Melbourne is that some businesses that shut tonight will never reopen. Mr. Allegri, who is one of the administrators of Virgin Australia, said companies and sectors that were already under pressure before the pandemic could be among those to collapse. He expects fashion retailers without a strong online presence to fall into trouble because they face strong competition from international retailers and new entrants online. He also warns the construction sector may struggle amid an oversupply in some segments of the market. This environment is going to further exacerbate the deterioration of those businesses and those businesses that don't have the balance sheet resilience and the cash reserves to help them navigate the trading losses or keep doors open. They're the ones that are going to be really challenged through this next phase of the pandemic, he said. Analysts at UBS looked through the recent statistics to assess the current health of small and medium enterprises. Figures from the Bureau of Statistics shows nearly a quarter of businesses that are currently receiving pandemic support, such as JobKeeper or rent deferrals, expect to close once the support is withdrawn. That equates to 10% of all firms. So we're going to lose 10% of businesses. 10%. That's a fair number, everyone. Would these businesses have legal recourse against the state if one could argue that the lockdowns were not justified? Could that be? Separate data from ACA research has revealed 36% of small businesses are very concerned about their survival, and a further 36% are quite concerned. And they have cause to be concerned, with SME revenue now down 33% since the pandemic began. Assessing the statistics, ABS analysts say the performance of SMEs has deteriorated since Melbourne re-entered lockdown in mid-July. Mr. Strong agreed some business closures were inevitable and said there needed to be support for owners to wind up operations. What we want to see is businesses close coherently, so that the owner of the business, she or he, keeps their house and they keep their mental health so they can open again in a year's time or 6 months' time. Because successful business people will go back to running a business, Mr. Strong said. We've been asking for a voucher system so a business can go to their experts, their accountants, their bookkeepers, whoever, and say, help me, I need a hand here to close. So Sydney reopening as scheduled as Melbourne plans halted. As Melbourne businesses prepare for a further 6 weeks of hibernation, businesses elsewhere continue to reopen. Nomad co-owner Miss Yazbek is moving back to Sydney, with the Melbourne expansion plans on hold for now. The original restaurant in Sydney's Surrey Hills is under renovation following the fire, and reopening is scheduled for next month. The response to the planned reopening has given Miss Yazbek confidence diners will return when the 7-year-old restaurant swings doors open once again. They've been really heartening, the responses from our clientele. We can't wait until you reopen. Please keep us posted. Just joining mailing lists and our social media, the responses has been really overwhelming, actually, she said. I get a bit emotional anytime we send out any sort of information, and the responses that come back, the personal messages about their favorite meals or their favorite dishes, their favorite memories. That's why we do what we do. That is, of course, unless a second wave of the pandemic escalates and sees Sydney headed for a Melbourne-style lockdown. She has a plan B to build on an existing online wine sales platform and offer takeaway cheese and charcuterie from an in-house deli. All businesses through this pandemic will need to be adaptable. So we're just trying to make sure there's some form of income in the complete shutdown if it happens again. Mr. Allegri said some companies' innovations trialing during lockdown will become permanent changes or additions to their business models, but the majority would just be making do. It's just something to keep the doors open for a short period of time, but it's not really going to replace the revenue levels that they had historically. In Melbourne, Miss Lee tried her plan B during the first lockdown, but as a Bikram yoga studio, the experience of practicing yoga in a specially heated room is difficult to replicate online, so Miss Lee is counting on reopening for survival. We're in the limbo, actually. No one knows what will happen in the future, but we have to be positive to fight through this. So here you can see, everyone, how small businesses are getting hammered. Small businesses are getting destroyed. What do you think the future will hold? Do you have a small business, everyone? Have you noticed a hit? And do you think this is going to destroy an entire section of the economy? Can we say goodbye to the middle class? Or at least 10% of it? As always, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and want to support the content I created, there are a few ways you can. You can join us on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us using our affiliate links from Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve, or Kucoin. You can buy merch from HeiseSays, use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Take care, everyone. I'll see you next time.